Hi, folks. Welcome back to that UFO podcast. And it's Monday. It's live. My name is Andy, and that means it's time for me and Pavel to once again talk shit and chat about the UFO topic, the subject, how messed up things are. And Pavel, just before you come in, I have to be honest and admit something. A few days ago on social media, posted a photograph of the top 10 podcasters in the world and what they earned. Folks, I was not number 9 on $28 million a year. Believe it or not, some folks genuinely believed that I am on $28 million a year. It's slightly below that, and I just wanted to clear that up right away, Pavel, as we start.
It's a marketing scheme that you're doing, and it's funny. I got to give you that.
Is that because of the book? Because I was marketing my book and using the link and saying the book got me that. What I really enjoyed, and we don't talk shit about people on this because a lot of people like to do that online, but John Stewart commented on my post on X.
Uncle John
said he was disgusted that I was 9. And I was like, and so many people were really nice about, that's Andy, funny. That'd be so great. I would love you had to be that successful. And John Stewart was fucking outraged. The following day, he did then post the signs footage of the Brazilian birthday party as potential legitimate alien sighting. So, you know, you give and take with these things. But yeah, thanks to John for the comment. Pavel, how was your weekend? How's things? It's been a few days since we spoke on Doomer Friday.
Yeah. Well, it's been pretty busy as we were expecting. There's a lot of stuff happening. There was this New York Post article where they actually gave a couple of codes of files that allegedly the Air Force Office of Special Investigations is withholding from the White House and from these releases. And it happened actually 90 days after David Grusch's 60 to 90 day quote. So, and exactly on the dot, which is kind of funny. And
so is that what Grusch was talking about?
I think it might be part of it, yeah, because that's direct information that people can go fish for, and that's actionable. And I think that this is what Dave and Matthew Brown and Dylan Borland are trying to do. They're trying to get actual actionable information, because I don't know if you noticed, the whistleblowers like David Grusch, Dylan Borland, Matthew Brown, Jeff Nusatelli, all of these people that are supporting each other, those are the ones that are trying to do stuff like this, whereas folks from the 2017 era and on, they seem more interested in public-facing stuff. I don't know if you agree with that, but it seems to me that way, and it's a fun phenomenon that you can see the contrast there. And I guess you can also see that each person who is doing this, they are doing it for a different reason. We've talked about this in previous shows, right? But I found that contrast pretty funny and interesting.
Yeah, so the Grusch 90-day thing first, I think there was a lot of folks who were perhaps, and I didn't know what to expect. I think a lot of folks were expecting maybe something really big and grand and a huge announcement, a breaking news. And I don't know if that was necessarily going to happen. Obviously, Grusch had been quite clear back in early May when he made his appearance on whichever news show it was, where he said, you know, it wasn't the files. He didn't find the files interesting. He knew what was coming with the drop, or at least the first drop anyway. And he was working on something else in the background. It perhaps now makes sense that it was something a little bit more, like you say, tangible, something they can get their hands on, something they can go after. He wasn't waiting 90 days to make a statement. He wasn't waiting 90 days for Trump to make a speech. And yeah, I think it makes sense then, like you say, there's the 2017 crew. I think, you know, if you want to make that your Mellon, your Elizondos and such, and then perhaps you've got Grusch and Co from 2023, maybe the hearings sort of era, the folks who have gone up on the stand, and I know there's some bleed over there. That isn't necessarily a bad thing, though, is it? That you've got a 2017 crew looking at a public-facing side of things, that you've got your 2023 group, who are your whistleblowers, your folks taking the stands, the people who are working politically. There definitely seems to be a lot of different camps within this. We've always said that. That's nothing new. We've not created that. But I do think there are perhaps some good angles of attack on this. Way back in the early days, Elizondo and Mellon would talk about having different prongs of attack and different ways this was going to be approached. And it probably just makes sense that that is the case. Pretty interesting, though. I think having some tangible things to go after makes sense. Because I believe already one of those recent videos from Drop 5 has been shown to be a missile. They're pretty confident of. I'll get your thoughts on this, Pavel. I commented on Anna-Polina Luna's X status just to say the Drop 5 was awful, because she said, here's Drop 5, Tranche 5. And I said, this was awful. And some folks agreed, and some folks were like, no, it's not. Richard Dolan, who does... and I got on really well with Richard. Richard, wrote the blurb on my book and stuff, and Richard does phenomenal work. I could never even begin to compare what I do or know to a Richard Dolan. I wouldn't dare. Richard has always been quite a big proponent of the quality of the drops, because he has the skills, capability, and know-how of looking through the files and being able to connect dots and being able to find things that are fascinating, little nuggets of information, a line in a 60-page document that he can go, this equates to this from 1984, and this actually backs up. So he's putting together a really delicate and intricate puzzle piece. When you see someone mending a watch and it's so delicate, and I couldn't begin to do that. I would just destroy a fucking analog watch. Dolan's so good at that. I've got a much more bird's eye level view of this, and I was thinking from a public perspective that those videos are what the public look at. The public won't give a crap about the files, the quality of the documents, the pictures, the renders. The videos are what would be the thing that moves this forward in any way, shape, or form publicly. But the documents are there for real hardcore researchers to dig into. And 100%, that's why I didn't dig through them on my review. I can't do those justice the same way a Richard Dolan can, for example, who can literally tell you not only what is important, but why it's important, and link that back. So 100%, folks have to go and check out Richard Dolan's channel for Drop 5 and that kind of review.
And I stand with him in the sense that the documents that have dropped are very, very interesting. That event from 2025 that it came from two different people in form of our report, from somebody from FBI and another one, I believe, from ODNI, and stuff like that, and also the stuff from the 40s, the 50s. That's what I think, if you like to read, because this is not to disparage anyone, but there's a major problem with the UFO community, especially recently because of social media and the short attention span, that people are not reading the books, people are not reading the documents, and they still want to give out their opinion on matters when they haven't really gone through the material, when it's written material. And that's a problem. For example, let me tell you the way that I do it. It's because I'm also very keen on watching video and listening to audio instead of reading. Fortunately, we now have Audible and any other way to read like that, and that's the way that I try to consume my stuff, because I don't get to a book and read like that. For me, it's too time consuming in terms of I got a lot of stuff to do and I got to do multiple things at the same time. That's the way I read. But I think that most people don't even take the time. Like, they just watch other people's videos about topics, but they never go to the source material, really. And this is a prevalent problem in culture in general, not just ufology, But yeah, I think that Dolan is uniquely qualified to find the good stuff in those documents, of course.
I think reading in general is becoming an acquired skill. I struggle for time. I try to read when I can. I like reading still for research purposes for the podcast. Audiobooks are getting more and more popular. Quite a lot of folks will say to me, and not to keep advertising the book, folks, I'm just joking with that a lot. But I'm recording an audiobook version of the book that will come out next year, because so many people were like, I would rather listen to an audiobook. So many folks, if you look at the UFO book charts, most of the top 20, 30, 40, 50, it's audiobook, audiobook, audiobook.
Yeah.
So I get that. Reading's becoming more of a specialized skill. And I think if you are a reader, and I encourage my children to read, but it's so easy now, even writing and spelling. My son, who is 5, sits on his tablet and just uses the microphone and tells his tablet what he's looking for on YouTube because he's 5 and can't spell properly yet. So, but yeah, but Dolan's very unique, I think, and more unique in this, that he's very, very acquired at what he does. So yeah, fair play to Richard Dolan.
Yep. Yeah, and his videos about the most recent events and also the releases have been very level-headed. So he's like on the ball as well, and I love that he's on it because he's one of the most important voices right now and has been for a long time. So yeah. Enough
Stop brown
Dolan.
nosing Richard Dolan.
Enough Dolan glazing, right? Let's move on.
Yeah, we're going to start straight in with the big news on Skywatcher, because I had a lot of interest from people getting in touch around this one, to be honest. So many questions sent in comments from people, and we'll try and get to folks on the YouTube. First one of the evening to say, please remember to like and comment, folks. It really does make a big, big difference on both channels. If you get the option to hype once you've hit like, that also means a lot as well. I don't know if you can do it on the lives, but hey ho, if you're listening back or watching back, any of that kind of support is appreciated. But yeah, Pavel, Ross Coulthart mentioned last week that he had an update on the Skywatcher situation. Ross Coulthart was the guy who broke the Skywatcher story. I remember now back, we're getting on 2 years, aren't we? From January 2025?
5, yeah.
Yeah, I was in Glasgow for football, and I was in a Starbucks. I've got my coffee for this evening, folks. I'm having a cheap coffee. I was in a Starbucks while my son was doing some extra coaching after being at a football match, and it dropped online, and everyone was like, "Oh my god!" So I managed to sit and watch the interview, and it was really, really intriguing, because not only did we have the build up of the interview with Barber, we had the video of the alleged egg object too. And this just set everyone online talking. It was huge. And Barber was making some big statements and big promises. For those who may be newer to the topic, very quickly, Skywatcher is an organization where Jake Barber comes forward, this guy who sounds like, and I'm not one for the acronyms and stuff. I'm not a Gerb, not a Dolan. This really kick-ass helicopter pilot involved in some very cool missions, some very secret missions, it sounded like, who essentially at one point, his job, it looked like, was retrieving non-human craft, like these eggs, for example. As part of his mission, he was literally pick the object up, drop it off somewhere. That was all he had to do with it. So it was this new claim, this new guy coming forward. We get the video along with the interview. That was a little bit misleading though, wasn't it? And I think a lot of folks said this at the time, that they tried to say it looked like the egg retrieval was from Barber and part of a mission he flew, but they then said they were separate. And I don't know if that was true or not, whether that was to protect Barber, protect sources. I always got the impression perhaps Barber leaked the video to Ross, and Ross played it and just protected Barber. I'm not too sure if you know much on that. But yeah, do you want to comment on that first, with the whole interview and the vibe at the time?
To me, the most important part of that moment was the fact that this was the first time that somebody came out with claims of actually being in the program. And from the very beginning, I think everybody felt like there was something off about the entire thing, because for me, for example, a subsequent interview that he did, there was like a Northrop Grumman poster in the background, right? And the whole conversation he had with Jesse, it's like, it makes me feel like he is probably within that program and wanted to get out of it, or felt threatened if what he's claiming is true, and that's why he came out. Something that gave me a little bit more confidence that he's not necessarily one of the quote unquote bad guys is the fact that I heard from multiple people that he was mingling with people from the community, but like introducing his children and everything. Like, and it's kind of weird. You would have to be a total sociopath to like hire a kid actor to play as your child, or you know what I mean. It's just really weird, and people, like, he's been always very open with stuff about his life, and spoken to people quite candidly about stuff that he does outside of what he's doing here. And um, but I think, and this is something that because full disclosure, I had a few interactions with him. It's not new that he reached out to some people. I was one of the people that he reached out to. We've spoken a couple of times. I told him, and I was very upfront about this, that I was very aware that people get psyoped like this. So I just wanted him to feel and understand that I don't think I can fully trust him unless, like, everything comes out about what he's been doing, and that is not happening. Like, he's been MIA for a long time. He it's months and months between messages whenever he makes contact. I do ask him a lot of questions that go unanswered, um, but it still made me come out with the feeling that he is, for example, when I reported on Trump being surrounded by people that were planning around him and trying to get him to get engaged in the topic. This was back in November. I had a sensation or feeling, not because of something that he told me, but because of our interactions, that whenever I was starting to report on stuff, then he sort of made contact just to ask how I was and all that. And it was very strange that it was whenever I tried to report something about the White House and about Trump and about um, I think that there's a behind the scenes effort that people are not aware that is going on. And Burleson is very careful, for example, as to what comes out publicly and the timing of it and all that. But in the background, I believe that it's Burleson is working with Barber, Grusch, Gerb to a certain extent as well, and a lot of the work they do, I would say the vast majority of it, is not known to the public. And this is something that I think people need to understand, because I can tell that there's a lot of people very frustrated that from the get-go they were like, this guy's fake. And it's like, if he's working with people like Burleson, Grush, stuff like that, either everybody is fake or he's not really that fake. I don't know what your thoughts on that are.
First off, just to clear things up, I have never had Jake Barber reach out to me. I did try and email him after I overheard him giving his email to someone at Sol. So I journalistically commandeered that through memory. The only time I've ever spoken to Jake Barber was at Sol, when I asked him for a quick photograph in the hall, where there was the one time I really saw him. And very kindly he said, well, I mean, he said to me, I recognize your voice. And I was like, I do a podcast. He went, yeah, I think I've listened to it. And I was like, oh, thanks. So that was my interaction with Jake Barber. Seemed very nice and personable. And when he was speaking to the group of folks in the hall, again, he was really interactive and chatty with folks. I'm very fortunate to get, like yourself, Pavel, to speak to a lot of these people on interviews. So when I was in that setting at Sol, I didn't feel I wanted to take up a lot of folks' time, because I get to see them and speak to them, generally, not Barber, like on interviews and stuff. So I just wanted to say hi and grab a quick photograph. But yeah, I've never had that interaction with Barber. And again, folks, before we kind of get to the chronology of this and what it was. So then Barber says in that interview, setting up this, and we'll paraphrase this, okay? But big headlines. Got this organization, Skywatcher. Now, this was a big thing at the time with the interview with Ross back in January 25 or February 25. He said that he made out, for me and a lot of folks, Skywatcher could already summon objects and bring them in. That for me was quite a big statement, and people got excited with that. And then as the weeks and months went by, they walked that back to say they were going to be able to within 12 months. And that they had two ways of doing this. They had a mechanical way, which was the dog whistle, which is a piece of equipment that when you turn it on, in my head, I always imagine a kind of big cube object with a switch on it and lots of buttons and lights, and it would use a frequency and summon whatever these objects are, like a call, like an Uber. That was the Uber app for these NHI. Or they had a Psionics assets team, which were people who were psionics, had psi abilities, and would use their mind to summon these objects. So they had these two different ways to do it. The big things then were that within 12 months, they were going to present publicly data that would show and confirm they could do this, that these objects were real, and they were going to collect data, document all of this, be public facing. James Fowler is the guy who, as part of the group, had the dog whistle technology. There were then different psionic assets as part of it. Gary Nolan was a part of it early on, and I think he came out and said that if they ever tried or attempted to do anything that he felt was morally bankrupt, i.e. summon something with the intent to harm or shoot something down, he would walk away. So that was a little bit of a canary in the coal mine for people there as well. There was a few moments, March, April, May of last year, June, where they released some kind of small documentary type episodes online, on socials. It seemed very much back to basics. Here are some different shapes of objects. We have tetrahedrons, jellyfish. Some of the videos they posted online were really, really poor, to be fair.
Yeah.
And some of them did look like birds, or really, really zoomed in on objects, okay? So the actual quality of what was coming out wasn't great in the beginning, but it was very well polished, really well produced. They were privately funded through Alex Clokus and the SALT organization stuff. That was how they kind of got in touch with people, it seems. So they didn't owe the public anything, in the sense that the public wasn't funding this. They weren't selling tickets. They weren't selling merchandise and owed the public anything. It was all privately funded, but they said they would be transparent. Things then went quiet, and around about August, they announced that James Fowler was leaving the organization. Bear in mind, if you're playing a game of football with your friends and one of them has the ball and at some point in the evening leaves and has to go home, he usually takes the ball home with him. The rest of you are then kind of stuck unless someone else gets another ball. So it seemed at that point Skywatcher might be in a difficult position, because they said this piece of equipment worked 100% of the time. They then came out and said they actually had a lot of data, loads of data. They were pouring through it, terabytes worth of stuff. I'll fast forward then to the Sol Symposium, where Barber was one of the guests. They gave a bit of an update on things. I got to ask the first question, Pavel, at the conference. I've mentioned this before, but it's been some time. I just want to read out what it was I asked. So I said, and this is me quoting folks because I used a little recording device. Thank you both for a great conversation. So it was Gary Nolan and Jake Barber on stage. Thank you, Jake. A lot of folks have clung to the fact that at the end of the year, you were talking about objectives for the end of 2025. And there was a quote, I don't want to misquote you, around having clarity around your techniques and whether they could truly do what you hope they can do. I wonder if you can talk about timescales, what your expectations are by the end of 25, and if those carry on into next year. So this was the end of October 2025. I asked this, folks. Barber said, absolutely, good question. We definitely set that mark, and by 2025, we should be able to do this. Maybe we don't make it by the day I said that, sometime in January. So Barber at that point was saying that he made those comments early 2025, 12 months could roll into 2026, like a calendar year. That's fair. But he said, but I think the goal orientation is important and we need to have a sense of urgency. There's no good reason that it's not possible, but there's always unforeseen challenges with that. We are in level 3 of our discussion. We are in a level 3 framework right now, but we can get the data prepared. There's Overton, terabytes of just radar. We can prepare that so it's worthy of the peer review process, and we're there. That was Barber's comment. So for me, I was like, and I reported to say, do you know what? That's fair enough to say around about a year, 12 months would be January, February, even March. It goes really quiet, really quiet.
August.
It is now, Pavel, you're spot on, mate. It is now August 2026. And it was a good few months ago. We started hearing that Skywatcher wasn't really a public thing anymore. and they had gone private or were brought into the government. I think that brings us up to speed with the Ross Coulthart interview Ross Coulthart update that's just happened over the weekend. Is that fair?
Yep. And new information that he's reporting on that needs to be analyzed, and let's wait if it's contested, because it's a wild, wild claim. In par with the wild claims that Ross Coulthart has been making for a couple of years now, right?
Yeah. One of the listener questions is pretty damning, or statements almost, and asking if we agree with it. And I'll probably get to it later on, if we've got the time. But it is around the sensationalism and the angles that are used now and taken on by News Nation through Ross's program or the unreported show that they do. But it gets clicks, it gets views, it gets engagement. I don't think there's any doubt that Ross does have sources, and potentially good sources too. There is an element, I suppose, of personally, as a fan of this topic, I like hearing people talk about underwater bases and guys flying black helicopters in the desert and retrieving UFOs and all, because it's the really cool, fun, wow, what if sensationalist stuff that would make a great movie. Then you've got the more boring, mundane aspect of it, the politics, the back office, back channel stuff that we hear goes on. And then the truth is probably somewhere in between all of that. But I would always rather hear this kind of stuff than not. And until Ross Coulthart's found out to be an absolute liar, then I'm more than happy to hear it. But it is pretty sensational. And Ross, generally, to be fair, does mention often enough that he can't tell you who his source is, but here's the information and he relays it on. Ross starts off with an investigation that he and he alone, Pavel, done a lot of great work on with the El Paso airport shutdown. Why didn't you dig into this yourself?
5 fucking videos, bro. Maybe 7, I think. Since April, I've been covering this shit. And when it first started, because I have contacts here in Mexico. I live in Tijuana, and I have family in the border of Juarez and El Paso, I think it is. Yeah. My late uncle had a ranch over there, and there's a lot of family that is constantly there. So when they learned what I was doing, they started just like sending me stuff, cousins that I have and stuff like that. So one of the tips was this, and I started just asking around because the whole situation was very strange. They put up a no-fly zone for, I think it was 10 days, the next 10 days, they said. And then they took it away. They took it out like 2 or 3 hours after. And it was very strange, that explanation about cartel drones that they knocked down. But then when I started asking, because the people on the ground that were going through it, they were like, this is very strange. Why would they just close it out for 10 days and then reopen it back up like that? What's it 10 days for? Like, it must have been something they felt was really serious for it to be 10 days. And when I started asking around, they were like, just take a look around the airspace of a different area on the vicinity, and one that is very close is White Sands. So that's when I was like, okay, so this might be something different because of the place where it's at. And it could be missile testing or whatever, but the people that I constantly talk to from different channels that are not involved in the whole control disclosure thing, it's just people who are like operators and technicians, and they started just telling me that something was off, something was weird about the way they do it. What I'm not clear on is if they're doing it with machinery or they're doing it with psionics. And I want to be completely honest with you, man. I'm not convinced about the whole psionics thing. I don't think that's a thing, if I'm honest with you. I know that people talk about it, but nobody has ever really seen it happen. And whenever they show something, it's like very blurry stuff, very far away stuff that could be anything really. It's just hard to believe. And this comes from somebody who believes that psi abilities are real, but they're very different to flying a ship. It's remote viewing, all of that stuff, but like flying a UFO is a little out there for me, at least. I'm sorry if people disagree. That's okay, but it's just too much for me.
Yeah, you're full of shit. No, no. Listen, I think it's fair opinion either way in all of this, because I think there are people that are very, very pro Ross, and like everyone in this topic. I hate having to keep saying it, but there are new people all the time. You're allowed to believe and think what you want. Just because I or you or anyone else says contrary, it doesn't matter. It's all fair game. Well, everything is literally on the table right now. The issue I've always had with any type of psionics or CE5 or human initiated contact, if folks want to see into a lot of that stuff, go check out James Iandoli's channel. Iandoli. I'm so shit at pronouncing his surname. I always mean to say it like The Sopranos. Iandoli or Iandoli. Anyway, go and check out Engaging the Phenomena's channel. James is brilliant. He's got a lot of work into this. He's got a background where he's very knowledgeable about Stephen Greer and the whole CE5 thing, but he also understands the premise and the basis of the process and what he's talking about. Excellent. Definitely check out Engaging the Phenomenon on that. My issue with any of that is always, if someone can summon something, just go on the news. I mean, look at News Nation and some of the stuff they are covering now. Surely Ross and Megan or whoever can jump on live at 5 nighttime and summon a UFO somewhere or an orb, but that just seems the most obvious thing to happen. But it doesn't. And why wouldn't you just do that? And there could be reasons. But I think if you're a member of the public, if you're trying to, your average Joe or Jane, and trying to sell them this whole psi-ability, psionic thing, it's the most common, obvious thing to ask, isn't it? Well,
Yeah.
do it. Oh, well, I
Yeah.
can't do it now. Oh, okay. It's like sticking mobile phone chargers to a wall or spoons to a wall. Cool. You can do it on video at a psi conference, but that's something you should be able to prove. But maybe, and again, I'll just use one example just for being fair to all sides of this, which I try to be, for God's sake. Maybe there's an element of they won't come in certain circumstances. That's not the point of this. It's got to be more of a personal, more of an intimate thing. But like we're going to get into, it doesn't seem that personal and intimate if we're
Yeah.
trying to shoot these things down.
Yeah.
Whatever these things are, and that's a really important point to clear up. I had this conversation last year with Diana Pasulka at the time, around when a lot of this stuff was going on, when I spoke to Diana. She'll be on the podcast in a few weeks to discuss our new book. And she mentioned, we don't know that these are craft. There's an assumption they're craft. We don't know what we're summoning here. And I think that's always important to mention. But yeah, I think the psionics thing is an interesting aspect of it. People have said they've seen it happen. I watched at the Sol Symposium stuff. A big group of people go out onto a pier in the most beautiful setting on a nighttime, and I sat on the balcony with a pizza and a can of Coke and watched them. And they done their best to summon, but eventually they got cold and their arses got sore sitting on the wood, and they went back inside. So no UFOs were harmed in the making of that CE5 event that night. But perhaps you need a Bledsoe for that kind of stuff.
But it's different, like, because Bledsoe never says that he flies them or he gets in them. Or James Iandoli from Engaging the Phenomenon, he's never said that. There's human initiated contact, which I think is happening as well. And those orbs seem to be real, but from that to fucking flying one of those, that's a stretch, bro.
Why is that a stretch then? I'll argue the counterpoint here. If there's a way to use your mind to summon an object, then where's the leap to being able to control it?
Oh, the leap is that it had never been talked about like that before 2025, when Jake Barber came out. Maybe Grant Cameron had written a few books about it, but Grant, he's in constant just word vomit. He's always talking. He's constant consciousness flow. But I don't know. I don't know. I guess you're right. I just don't. It's just a little too much for me. Like less than 5 years ago, I didn't even know what the fuck remote viewing was, bro. And
Mm.
then when I started researching it, it was like this feels very strange. Now they're fucking flying them. That's weird.
Yeah, and whatever these are, and you say flying, we don't know. It could be falling with style, like Buzz Lightyear said. And I only say that half flippantly. But so you mentioned Ross mentioned this whole Sierra Blanca and White Sands. Skywatcher had been conducting operations in this area. Ross says defense sources told him observers were watching Skywatcher. So defense folks observing from the Defense Department, defense intelligence officials have been watching / spying on Skywatcher. I imagine that wouldn't be a shock to anyone there. And they were watching them do their psionic summoning, the dog whistle operations, and this included a final test in July 2025. According to Ross, at the same time Skywatcher was conducting those experiments in July 2025, I hope I've got this right, UAP swarms began appearing roughly 200 miles away over the White Sands missile range. And like you mentioned, White Sands matters because it's a major US military test range. It's where the Trinity atomic test happened, missile weapons development happened. Holloman Air Force Base isn't far, and it's an extremely sensitive military airspace. So what I'm putting together from that is the defense intelligence folks who were watching this, they are more than comfortable that something that Skywatcher was doing had a positive connection to a swarm that happened 200 miles away. I don't know what that may be or how they would know. And they put 2 and 2 together and got 4. And that timeline mirrors up with only weeks later, James Fowler announces, I'm leaving Skywatcher, I'm taking my ball, and I'm joining a new team.
And then at the end of 2025, after July, when James left, you see that report that came out in the UFO files of an ODNI officer that interacted with orbs while they were on a helicopter, and the orbs were allegedly 30, 50 yards away. So it was really clear for them. And that's what allegedly accelerated everything since December 2025 until what we have right now. And I think it might be possibly related because the incident from El Paso from February 2026 is a different one from the one in December. And the information that I had is that those kind of events were taking place periodically. It wasn't just those two events. So as far as I know, that airspace remains closed, that chunk, and operations are ongoing right there, according to the information that I have.
May I introduce a clip here? I've got a couple of clips from Ross's piece. Again, I would always encourage folks, whenever I show any clip, please go and watch the full section from Ross and Megan. It's like 34 minutes long. I've got a couple of minutes worth of clips here, but to give you the full picture and full context, always go and watch the full thing. And I thank them for the work they have done on this. Let me just add Ross to the stage here.
Indeed defunct. It's been dissolved as a business entity. I suspect key individuals from the Skywatcher team are now working with the Defence War Department at the White Sands Range. Yes, they have been summoning, detecting, and yes, shooting down what some call drones, others UAPs. The airspace was closed to stop any other non-government activity so that the government had a secure location from where it could summon, detect, and shoot down UAPs, craft. This has been happening. To be clear, I'm told the Defence Department is using the same so-called dog whistle, electromechanical signalling, and psionic summoners, neuromeditative interaction, as Skywatcher's team was doing at Sierra Blanca. The Department of War has quite literally taken on the running of its own covert operation to intercept these mystery objects. And I'm told they have recently downed objects, craft, both in the US and across the border near Juarez in Mexico. I am also told by White House sources that President Trump has personally authorized this operation, which perhaps explains why no full admission has yet been made to the public about the full extent of what the government really knows. There is a full-on effort underway by the administration to recover suspected non-human intelligence exotic technology in a program totally separate from the so-called legacy program.
So this is a little, let's call it an educated speculation. I think that Jake and Grusch are part of that team, not just James Fowler, who has the technology. I think that Jake and David is also probably aware of what's going on with that, because I don't know if you've seen how supportive Dave has been of the president and what he's been doing. He's like potentially, stroking his ego and all that. And we do know that there is a connection between Jake and Grusch from that picture at Esalen. So they have been at least that once in contact, but Jake has referred publicly to Dave in like a warm sort of manner, as if they were friends. So yeah, that's all I can say about that.
Yeah. Barber and Grusch would be really interesting to see side by side. That's one, and I know he's in that top 10 podcaster chart along with me for the money we make. But Joe Rogan, I would love to see Grusch and Barber sit either side of a table across from Rogan.
That would be wild.
We don't get enough of that. And I think sometimes, I don't know if you're like me, and maybe folks in the comments and listening to this will be the same. I always like, my ears prick up whenever I hear a whistleblower, whether it's Matthew Brown, Dylan Borland, Lou Elizondo, Jake Barber, David Grusch, when they mention each other, because I'm always really curious as to, are they being friendly? Are they being positive? Do you get me? Like, are they leaving? I always remember once hearing a really prominent UFO journalist name other prominent UFO journalists, and they left a really big name out, and I was like, yeah, that's deliberate. It was a while ago, and it was all public. It wasn't even on my podcast. Oh wait, no, it was on with me. And I was always like, yeah, you've left that out deliberately. But you can also see sometimes a lot of folks clearly don't get on, and that's fine. That's human nature. That's life. And like we've said, there are camps in this. There are factions. There are people who like what other folks do. There are people who just don't like people. There are people who do not like me. There are people who do not like you, Pavel. There are people who just don't mix and get on well. And when you think about some of the egos and the personalities who must be involved at the highest levels of this topic, when you put Fravor, Graves, Grusch, Barber, Elizondo, Mellon all in a room, and you give them imagine you went Big Brother style, okay? Classic Big Brother, and you put 12 UFO whistleblowers in a room.
No way, dude.
And just filmed them for 24 hours. They would all split up into little groups. They would all go into little camps. And you know what? I would watch that. I've not watched that shit for years.
Some of them might get into fistfights, just to be clear.
100%. Because they've got pride, they've got egos, they've got things they have been exposed to and experienced that other people haven't. And that's for me, that's fine. And I'm comfortable knowing that there will be people who I don't like or don't agree with who might end up doing some really good things for this topic. And there might be people that you do like who end up being more negative or detrimental to parts of the topic. And that's where it's always important for me to have a fluid opinion. as things go on. No one's perfect, as is obvious by you wearing a Newcastle shirt to record this. So, you know.
It was a gift, man. It says Psicoactivo in the back. Gift from one of the viewers. Thank you.
Yeah, people don't send me enough gifts. Although, thank you to the listener some time ago who sent me a lot of these little wooden carvings.
Yeah, those are really cool.
I can't find who it was, and it was so long ago, and they've been in storage, but now I've got a space to put them. Thank you so much. They are here. If you even still listen or watch, I would appreciate. I really appreciate that. So thank you. But yeah, so there were some massive claims, Pavel, put out by Ross on there. You know, he claims Trump personally authorized this whole operation.
Yeah.
It's being run from the White House through senior intelligence advisors. The ODNI is involved. They're using directed energy and high pulse microwave systems to disable craft and bring them down. And Ross says this is designed to circumvent the legacy program. You know, what's this like? Can you even compare it to like Charlie in the Chocolate Factory when, you know, Slugworth can't make his own chocolate sell as well as Willy Wonka's? So he sends a spy in to try and spy on them to do it. They've decided in the White House here, do you know what? We can't get into these legacy programs. We're trying to get this information. We're being stonewalled. Why don't we just do this ourselves? Why don't we just make our own? That makes sense. Now, we're going to get to the moral side of things of actually trying to shoot these things down or harm them, given we don't know what they are. Maybe, we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, the idea that this is now set up, Skywatcher has been brought in-house, and this was something I talked about a lot with Dan when he was on the podcast a lot back at the time when this was all happening, and other folks. We would often have the discussion that maybe Skywatcher is being set up and they are speaking publicly, but they are not speaking to the public.
Yeah.
What they're saying and what they are doing and what they are alluding to be doing isn't for us. It's for people in the background. It's for people in the shadows who are watching them, who are spying on them, as we are being told here by Ross. And they're going, we can do this thing. Do you really want us on the outside pissing in? Or do you want us on the inside pissing out? Because I know which one would be better. And what they've done here, it looks like, is they've pulled them in and went, okay, let's work with you.
So to be clear on this, last November, that report of a team closing in on Trump, that's all like work that has been done in the background that we have no idea how it went down or what happened. We just had some indications, a few public reports, but we had no idea how things played out. And the result right now is there was a public announcement. There have been 5 drops of things. I get that the majority of them are not what people expect or want because they want something more tangible. But I think that is because partly of this work that has been done in the background and that people are not going to probably find out about. I haven't found out about most of it. And it's, trust me, I've been asking. One of the questions that I kept asking Jake was about this, essentially, whether they had been red teamed or like infiltrated from the beginning, something along those lines. It was my understanding that he was just as constrained as like people like Mike Batista or other folks who publicly said that they wouldn't talk about Skywatcher. And Jake was in the same vein. And he was just like, he seemed not happy with the way people were interpreting that. And I was like, dude, what do you want people to think? It's kind of obvious. I mean, and if you were, but I guess that if Ross is correct on his reporting, they weren't exactly red team, but they are working for the White House, like essentially, right?
Yes, but there's another twist in this story. And Ross says that while the president has given the go here, and I'm sure Trump would love to be in charge of something like this, I could only imagine as much as I feel Trump isn't really interested in the UFO topic, and he said as much multiple times, folks, that's not an opinion. Trump has quite often said, you know, I don't believe myself, but, you know, the pilots, they have said. Ross says that Trump has given the go-ahead for this. That strokes his ego. Grusch, Elizondo, and others, they all stroke the president's ego with this, and I think you have to try and get this done. Ross Coulthart says Trump isn't getting the full story about what's being recovered, and that one concern, Ross is told, is that Trump is being told that some of these objects are simply advanced foreign adversary drones. Quick aside, Pavel, I could believe that is still the case. I don't think every single object shot down, filmed, talked about, seen, or reported is a non-human object. That's just not going to be the case. Mathematically,
Yeah.
that is not right. I think some of them will be, but that's fine. But Ross raises the possibility that individuals connected to the legacy program have already influenced and infiltrated this newer operation. So the White House creates its own program to bypass the legacy program, only for the legacy program people potentially to infiltrate the new program. It's the circle of life.
And if that happened and it's real, we're probably going to be told that none of that, what was reported, is real. If that happened. So expect that, I guess.
There is another huge claim that is made by Ross. He says, and this would be a big one, and this is one that I would be surprised, sort of, if the mainstream media don't pick up on this particular comment. Ross claims that a civilian aircraft or civilian aircrafts have previously been accidentally brought down when high pulse microwave weapons were used during UAP related operations. So Ross does not publicly prove that the specific White Sands civilian crash he discusses was caused by alleged UAP. He reports on a medevac plane with 4 civilians being brought down, but he says he doesn't know that was UAP related or not. But he is saying that civilian aircraft have been brought down. I fully await people to bring up the MH370 stuff now, which sorry, not going there personally. You know the channel to go to for that kind of stuff. But yeah, what do you make on that civilian aircraft being brought down? I don't think the US or any government doing this kind of really dark, black, top secret stuff gives a shit about civilians being hit in the crossfires of this. I really don't.
I mean, if the White House are the ones doing it, as Ross is reporting, they should, technically, right? Even if it's top secret stuff. But if it's like black teams, yeah, of course they don't give a shit.
Yeah, because this kind of stuff must happen all the time. I've had a few conversations with over the years, not like top secret industry insiders, right? I just mean folks who have been in the military, who listen to the podcast, watch the podcast, have their own podcasts. And I suppose I'm saying this just from my perspective, having not lived that lifestyle, but I've got friends who have been in the military in the UK and whatnot and served abroad, and I understand what they go through to an extent. They would often say that these guys are sworn to protect their country, they swear on oaths and everything like that, but shit happens on battlefields and in the middle of wars and in these operations. When you're talking about the US, aspects of the US government and the military trying to protect the biggest secret of all time, with trillions of dollars at stake, with what they keep saying is national security at stake, with trying to be the preeminent superpower on the planet at stake, do you think they care if a couple of people, which literally the small numbers of folks that really would get injured here, if something happens to them? 100% for me, they don't give a shit. It just gets covered up.
Yeah, as it always does. But yeah, if I don't think there's going to be a response from the White House on this, to be honest with you. Do you think there would be?
Oh God, no. But again, why don't mainstream media pick up on this a little bit more? I'd love to see this brought up at press conferences and whatnot, just to put some pressure on it. But again, this is the kind of stuff that when folks say we get disclosure, we get the government's confirming things, this will all come out. Stuff like that won't come out. We're not going to be told, oh, by the way, yes, there's aliens, but we accidentally shot down a few aircraft over the years trying to kind of investigate this stuff. What I would be curious of, when we're in this weird phase and weird time, Pavel, right?
Yeah.
where folks are saying we may genuinely be creeping towards some kind of announcement, some kind of confirmation from Trump to say there may be some kind of NHI, there may be some kind of interaction. Does it make sense to you? And I've never considered this before until this. Does it make sense to you that if the White House has sort of created its own mini legacy program, crash retrieval program, that would be a really easy way for them and actually the legacy programs themselves to get away with this long term and short term by the White House going, we've just started doing this in July or August 2025. We have managed to bring down some objects that we don't believe are human or made by man or however they want to word it. And we have scientists and investigators and researchers working on some very strange materials. Because then the legacy programs, maybe for us and people who know about this topic, they're still at play. But for the general public, are the general public going, oh, has this happened before? What about the decades gone by? Or do the general public go, shit, last year we managed to shoot down a UFO?
You know,
Just makes sense.
I'm just really worried that if the White House is doing this actually, because you got to look at the track record that the president has, and if it's not a power move that is in his benefit, he's not going to go through with it. And the fact that now he's engaging in it, if this whole topic is real and the whole narrative that this is actually a race for technology is real, I would think that he wants in on that. And that worries me because he's not looking at it from an announcement or new knowledge for humanity perspective. He's looking at it as a business perspective. And that's something that should always be questioned, I believe. I don't know if you agree there.
I understand, but I don't think it's necessarily relevant. And I had this discussion with Danny Sheehan when towards the end of our interview, Sheehan went off on Trump, right?
Oh,
and
yeah,
I tried to pull him back and he went off on Trump and I tried to pull him back and I'm like, look, I'm just trying to talk about UFO stuff. People in this chat, people watching now, will be pro-Trump, anti-Trump, whatever it may be. What I'm saying to you, Pavel, is it doesn't matter what you or I think about Trump's intentions. What I'm saying is if he's going to do this anyway, we have to then deal with it from that point onwards. It doesn't matter that you do or don't want Trump to disclose, to confirm, to be involved, because that then goes down the, oh yeah, but morally this is wrong. I'm sorry, shit happens, human nature, society's messed up. So let's just take the person doing it out of this and just talk about the actual scenario and situation of, are we heading towards some kind of confirmation and we then take it from there and deal with whatever comes after that?
Let me tell you why I disagree with you, man. Because for me, the intent is very important, because even if it happens, even if there is some kind of confirmation from Trump, I think that intent will affect in a very different way, in a very specific way after it happens, because it will depend on what he wants from that specifically and what other people who are involved in this want from that level of confirmation or that type of confirmation. So that's why I think it is important to look at the motives that people have and the intent, and it needs to be analyzed. And this is honestly, people know that I don't like Trump. I would say this about any politician. I don't trust any politician to try and do this. I think it should come from either the scientific community or media, or, you know, and it needs to happen with evidence, of course. But I don't know. I do understand the power that is behind an official confirmation from the President of the United States, but intent will always play a huge part in it. We can't ignore that.
No, but my point is, and this is why I enjoy this, because we can agree and disagree, is actually my point is there's nothing to disagree on. What I'm saying is, if we are heading towards a place where regardless what me or you think or what anyone else thinks or does, the President of the United States in the coming weeks or months might make some kind of pointed remarks around there being a non-human intelligence. We have to deal with what happens after that, and we have to deal with the conversations there. We can't influence that, though. If what's going on right now, according to Ross Coulthart, Pavel, and tell me if I'm missing anything out here, is the White House has went, we're trying to investigate all of this. We can't get into these legacy programs. Burleson, Grusch, Barber and co. are being stonewalled and they are struggling. It looks like they may have came up with another idea, and that is, let's do our own. And we can, it's almost like fast tracking and I want to call it confirmation, but let's call it disclosure. We want to fast track disclosure. So you get this plan. We bring some of these things down on our own. And in a minute, I'd like to discuss what may actually be being brought down, because I think a lot of folks, rightly, are going to be horrified at the prospect of, oh my God, they're bringing down alien craft with entities and beings and whatnot. What if we'll get to again in a second what they might be, but they're bringing these down and they themselves can then go, look what we have just done. And we go from there, because at that point we get our confirmation. I'm not saying it's a choice, Pavel, of either it happens this way or it doesn't happen at all. What one do you want? I'm looking at a scenario here and thinking there's a reasonable chance. And if I'm going to put my proper sensible hat on here and go with odds, I reckon there's a 25% chance before the end of October, Trump says something about this. Not a speech, not a big speech about it, not a podium, but just some kind of statement to allude to something, and it moves us forward. The intentions behind that, the motivations behind that, what might come from that, we can't influence right now, but we're maybe heading towards something happening that we just have to deal with.
We can't influence it, but we will have to deal with it when it happens, because it will affect everybody. Intentions.
Yeah. And that's life.
Yeah.
Like the Second World War, people had to deal with it. They couldn't do much about it. People just had to go and deal with how life changed, what happened. Any number of plagues over the years, any number of, incidents of happening countries, changes of governments, all that kind of stuff. People get caught in the crosshairs, and I don't see a way, and maybe this is a conversation for another day, Pavel, around disclosure or confirmation in general. I don't see a way this can happen that we don't just have to slightly open Pandora's box, no matter how nicely it's done, and then deal with it from there. It has to be like a proper bang, full stop.
It's still Pandora's box, even if you want to just take a peek.
Yeah, it might be a tiny box, and Lord knows we all want a tiny box, not a big box, folks. Make of that what you will. From there, we're going to have to deal.
I'm kidding.
Don't be disgusting, Pavel. I would never. But we're going to have to deal with whatever's in the box at that point. For my and I think I get not everyone thinks the way I do. I just think I'm realistic, and being Scottish, quite pessimistic in all of this, that something will happen. I can foresee a situation, regardless of which administration does this, right, where we get what we've all wanted. We finally get that satisfaction, that what's the word, where we get shit, I'm having a stroke. When you finally are, you get confirmed that you were right all along, and then you can tell all your friends, get it up you. I was right. Yeah. Aliens. We finally get to tell our friends, see, aliens are real. We've not been crazy. This vindication. Thank you. Someone put it on the screen, David. Vindication will be. I'll go with that one. We finally get vindicated that everything we've talked about, discussed, there was something to it. We can crack on from there, right? Vindication, validation, all of the above. Thanks, folks. Stop putting words in now. We finally get that.
Don't stop.
But it's also probably going to be something where we go, I can't believe we got it, but we also have to deal with this thing we never thought about. Or can you believe this happened? Or isn't it just humanity to have this really good, positive thing and then shit happens? So that's probably what's going to happen, where we get something good, like the whole shit sandwich thing, when you get a compliment. The shit sandwich of something good, something shit you do, and then something good on top of it, like your boss would tell you at work. We're probably going to get something like that, a disclosure shit sandwich.
There's a really interesting quote from Deadpool, actually, when he realizes he has cancer, and he says that life is just a series of really horrible moments adorned by tiny little, really good moments. But
yeah,
shit always hits the fan at some point. It's life. We all die eventually, you know.
Oh, mate, see, right now, I'm personally in life. I'm never going to complain about the life I've got. But I've had one of those months where if it could go wrong, it has went wrong, culminating in a car being in a garage for 2 weeks during the school holidays. That is going to cost me so much money to fix at a time that I don't have $28 million to buy a new car. And it's causing so many issues. But that's life, and you have to adapt and deal with it from there. So it's really annoying, but you just have to kind of roll with the punches. So yeah,
and you can also take the very Taoism sort of side of it. It's things happen because they have to happen the way they happen. That's life, you know. And
I'm always like that. I'm still waiting on a huge lottery winner. I don't play the lottery though, which is part of the issue on that one. But yeah, I always think, you know, life's going to throw at you what it's going to throw at you, and you have to kind of roll with those punches. And as humanity, as and when we get this, it's not going to be. And I've always loved thinking about, you know, when people read, because most folks have read the Harry Potter books. When you read those, you created, or any book series, you created a picture of it in your mind. And I always used to pronounce Hermione as Hermione, because I never heard her. Yeah, I'd never heard her name said. So it was Hermione, right? And then you see this movie and someone goes, Hermione. And I was like, what the Hermione? Oh, that sounds better, actually. But you see, you have this idea in your head of this world and what it's going to look like. And then on screen, the first movie comes out and it's phenomenal. It looks amazing. But the castle looks different and the school looks different and the characters look different because it's not what you had in your head. And you either love it or hate it.
And Pete's isn't there. Yeah.
It's just different to what you expected. David Grusch might be what you thought a UFO whistleblower would look like or not. We don't know. Jake Barber's story might be what you thought that would sound like. Ross Coulthart may or may not be the journalist that breaks this all open. Maybe Corbell does. Maybe Knapp does. Maybe a completely unrelated journalist one day who right now works for Time or works for the New York Times or works for the Washington Post or has an OnlyFans channel. I don't know, right? Lots of great content on there. But, you know, some random journalist one day breaks this story open that we have never heard of in the most sensational way. We don't know. We're just going to have to deal with it the day we get there. But I think we're in a place where so much is going on, so much is happening, so many chess pieces are moving. We might actually... Dr. Phil is now every other day releasing a podcast and show on UFOs.
He was not happy with the fifth batch of files.
No, and fair play, because he clearly, from what I understand, I say clearly, this might not be clear, he is a friend of Trump. He's someone who's, they've obviously got a relationship over the years. I'm sure they've partied over the years together and whatnot. Let's leave that one there. But Dr. Phil has suddenly become a mouthpiece for this topic. I personally feel that Trump said to him, I don't know about all of this. You can kind of run with it for me. You'll know what to say. Go and deal with it. And Dr. Phil's out there doing his thing. Maybe it's just content, but it doesn't look like it. It looks like something's going on and we are kind of moving towards something. But in chaos, there is opportunity. But within that, there are a lot of people who will look to take their piece of the pie in all of this as well.
That always happens. Whenever there's moving towards like a singularity, everybody wants a piece of it. It happened when, for example, Jesus died. Like a lot of things happened afterwards that everybody kept a piece of a pie, you know, and it always happens. In war, it always happens too.
Yeah, it's a really odd situation in time where so much is happening. It's difficult to keep up with. I'm not complaining, giving what I do, what you do, and people want to know. It's just a fun, and this is why I'm enjoying the Monday shows, Pavel, where it gives us a chance to walk through this, and you've just ruined Mr. Thomas's. He went, "Fuck, Jesus died." Yes, allegedly for our sins.
That's the word. That's the word.
Yeah. On this, right, I've got another clip to play, and I can't quite remember what the clip was, but it's from Ross's, before we play the Reese one. But here was another clip from Ross and Megan, which I think I meant to play a few minutes ago.
HI technology. If there's a possibility that there is a biological entity on board those craft, a living, intelligent, advanced being, what does it say about our potential first contact with a non-human intelligence that we're acting offensively against them? One of the excuses that was put to me by one person I spoke to about this was that if you ran through the security area of a secure airport with something in your hands, the first thing that security guards would be obliged to do is to shoot at you. The problem is we've invited these entities, we've summoned them into this area, and we're now shooting them down. There are really big moral and ethical issues here that I think need to be debated publicly. And there is squeamishness and concern amongst even the personnel on these ranges about what's being done on the United States' behalf. And frankly, I know there'll be a lot of people who roll their eyes and say, you know, this is all confidential sources, we can't prove this. Prove me wrong. The simple fact is, this is happening. The TFR was imposed over the Skywatcher operation for a very specific national security reason. They wanted it shut down because it was disrupting operations at White Sands.
Prove me wrong. He's like,
Yeah.
he does this quite often, right?
So did Chris Benoit. That was his phrase. Not comparing Russ Coulthart with Chris Benoit in any way, shape, or form. Separate the art from the artist.
The dude without a neck, right? Chris Benoit, the wrestler.
Yeah, I mean, that's not famously what he's best known for. But yeah. So yeah,
sorry.
I wanted to touch on the idea of what may be getting brought down here. So of course, for me, if these objects contain any form of life, sentient or not, biological, mechanical, third generation AI clones is a popular phrase I always hear. That's abhorrent, and yes, it's awful. Is there a scenario where what's being summoned is meant to be brought down?
Well, first of all, and I think that we're going to get into just hypotheticals, because the first and most important thing is to get actual proof that this is real and that this is happening, right? For all we know, if, I don't know, maybe they're just really drones and not UFOs. I don't know. But whenever a claim like this comes out, which is pretty fantastical and sensational in many cases, in many ways, I think that we need to corroborate with some level of proof. And this comes from somebody who was reporting on this for months, but I'm still not convinced that it's real. I was just reporting on information that I got, but I was very clear and when I said this could very well not be UFOs at all. And it's something that just technology being used to bring down actual drones, or, you know, until we get corroboration, we can't, we can speculate though. So for me, if let's say they are, and there is some sort of hostile attempt to shoot them down, that is wrong. I do agree there. If this is actually happening, I think it's a terrible idea. And people were worried that Trump was going to get us into war with other countries. If this shit is happening actually, and they're doing this, it might be much more than just a regional war in here, right?
Yes. Potentially.
Potentially.
I understand your point about, you know, a few folks in the comments here, again, leave a like and everything like that. We're over an hour now, folks. Come on. Lots of you watching and listening, so leave likes and comments on the channels, helps us out. But we're relying on Ross's reporting here only. That's not necessarily true, because we do have the other folks who were involved in Skywatcher who have all claimed this. You then have independently Gary Nolan, who is a very well-respected academic and scientist who has spent time with those guys, and he said he himself had seen an object. Gary did say that, didn't he, in the original stuff he was talking about, where he said that an object had been brought in, not landed in front of him, but that they could do this. He was blown away by it. So other folks have seen this done. Barber has been mentioned by other whistleblowers. So you have to, I suppose you don't have to, but you could then lend an extra piece of credibility. So this isn't just something that people are saying it's happened, you have to believe is. There are other folks backing it up to say that something is being summoned. A few folks, again, are wary in the chat of, oh God, it's not drones, don't be ridiculous. Just because it's a drone doesn't mean it's not, it doesn't mean it's human drones. You know, I imagine in the early days of drone technology, when the US, China, and Russia were all spying on each other with the first drones before they were really commercially popular, I bet someone managed to create a device or piece of technology that could interfere with a signal and bring the drone down or bring it in without having to fire on it. They could do it really sneakily, and I'm sure very quickly they worked that one out. So for me, it would seem that if as humans we have developed technologies and capabilities and methodologies to bring in a form of craft or object or non-human technology, then either they still can't work out why we're doing it. So does that really show intelligence? Because they're still letting us do it. If we're then being allowed to bring them down, why isn't there any retaliation we know of? Why aren't they stopping it? Why aren't they just not showing up? So again, I don't think it's unfair to add in, just a last point, to add in the possibility that these objects are meant to be summoned and meant to be brought down, much like when you dip your little bubble wand into the bubbles and blow. You'll see lots of bubbles and you can pop them, you can let them land, you can let them float away. Maybe they're just NHI bubbles. Like, it could be, I don't know. Everyone just assumes craft, beings, mechanical, electronic. We don't know. But I'm just saying that this could be something really strange that we haven't considered. And in that case, why can't we bring them down perhaps?
Yeah. And also there is this, like the gifts that Pasolka, Nolan, and other people have talked about, right? That's essentially what you're referring to, that it's another possibility, right?
Yeah, basically. And folk are saying bubbles. I'm just trying to use that as a random. It could be something totally we don't know, we've not thought of, but they could be satellites. They could be non-human drones. They just could be something that we've not considered that is fully and totally disposable to them, which is very much, you can summon these all you like. They keep popping through. Because I always think, and when this goes back to me trying to think really realistically, and this is what I would love half an hour with David Grusch or half an hour with Barber to sit and just chat shit and throw all my ramblings at them and go, is that right? Is that something you've thought about? Is it? You know, say we manufactured 100,000 dog whistles and placed them all over the planet and turned them all on at the same time. Are we going to get 100,000 objects showing up at all different points of the planet?
Maybe more.
100,000 sentient NHIs or more, yeah. Like, are we going to get all these things show up with all these pilots? Do we have a fleet of NHI beings waiting on someone flicking the switch on their dog whistle or a psionic asset lying there to summon them and going, right, it's Dave's turn now. Dave, off you go back to Earth. You know, they want to see you. That just seems really unrealistic to me, as opposed to these being...
Unless they are, have you seen Nope from
Yeah.
Jordan Peele? Unless they are something like sort of wild yet sentient,
So, like biological.
Yeah. Because if that is the case and they are sentient and intelligent, but they do display characteristics like flies to a light bulb, something like that, you know, that unless it's something like that, yeah, I guess you would be correct. But yeah, what do you think about that though? Of them being potentially wild animals of sorts.
Yeah, I always like that idea that there potentially is something, even like within the clouds of this planet, a form of life that we have not yet encountered, that we don't yet know of. Like you say, like moths to a light bulb. I just this evening saw, I was watching when I was messing about on Facebook, Norm Macdonald's famous joke on Conan O'Brien, where he people should go and look it up because it's all about telling it. And he says it's a joke he heard on the way over to Conan's show. And the punchline is around about a moth and the light was on. And is it the case that, you're flicking a light on and attracting a moth? Whether it's sentient or not, whether it's like, a von Neumann probe, whether it's just something that's there to look after the planet, whether it's something that's monitoring us, whether it's something that's there all the time, and when it's flicked on, pops into existence. Maybe you're accessing the admin settings of reality. Matthew Brown and co. Reality's classified. Well, maybe this is something that just lets us rip a little hole in that curtain and something to nip through and pop through, and we close it, and then we do what we want. 100% though, just to not conflate this, if indeed these things are in any way sentient or living, no, we should not be bringing them down. But in every way, shape, or form, it's humanity. Would you be shocked if we were doing that?
Nope.
No, not necessarily.
Nope.
Yeah. When do you want to play the Reese clip?
Oh, this is a concern that I think was already raised by Reese Dalton Morgan from the UFOsy channel when he interviewed Ross Coulthart. There's a moment where they speak about Skywatcher and the concerns that Reese has. By the way, I met Reese at Contact in the Desert. He's wonderful. And he has really interesting takes on this clip that I showed you. I think we should talk about it.
Yeah, I met Reese at the Sol Symposium too. He'd flown all the way to Italy from Australia. So I'll play this clip now. And this is, like you say, Pavel, Reese Dalton Morgan, UFOsy on X, interviewing Ross Coulthart.
Yeah.
Me doing our podcasts or doing media. It's coming from the big end of town in Silicon Valley who are beginning to realize they've been left out of the party and they want in.
Well, that almost leads to Skywatcher, doesn't it, with the private investment going into that. And I guess for people that don't know, Skywatcher is a private company that's funded by Silicon Valley essentially to try and, capture proof or evidence of UFOs, but also, unidentified aircraft. And that leads me to ask, do you think that there's maybe a concern with, say, Silicon Valley getting involved and creating Skywatcher, that that program or that company could be absorbed by the black world and be classified just like other UFO programs in the past as well?
My big worry for Skywatcher is that it might accept a juicy contract. I mean, if I was the Defence Department, knowing that Skywatcher is essentially funded by private equity, and I think there's probably quite a few $1 million already that's gone into doing the work that they're doing, and it's laudable work. I mean, James Fowler, who's part of Skywatcher with Jake Barber, he did an interview with Jesse Michaels recently where he described some absolutely amazing results. And he actually acknowledged that there were people inside the US government who acknowledged that what they were being shown by Skywatcher was very probably non-human. So the implications of this are that Skywatcher is uncovering stuff that probably the US Defence Department doesn't want uncovered. And my brooding nightmare about Skywatcher is it's run by good people. James and Jake are friends, they're good guys, and they're genuinely interested in transparency. But the money men behind them, they're obviously keen to get contracts. They're keen to demonstrate the utility of what they're doing. So let's hope that they're not tied up with a juicy contract from the Defence Department that offers them, $50 million to go away and do UAP observations for, maybe Arrow or the Defence Department. And if that happened, this is all totally hypothetical, what kind of NDAs or secrecy agreements would they be tied up in as a result of that?
Exactly, yeah. And then it just disappears like other UFO programs in the past.
Well, let's hope that doesn't happen. Let's hope they're good people and that they continue doing and showing the transparency they've been showing to date.
Yeah, I hope so too.
And then Fowler was on American Alchemy, basically leaving the door open for the government to tell them to stop. And that essentially, that was the gist of it. When I don't recall the exact quote, but essentially that was the gist of it. Do you think they
And
got
that's my point.
contracts or just
Yeah.
absorbed by the White House with contracts?
Yeah, I do.
don't know.
I don't think they ever set out to bring about disclosure. I think they set out to show, look, we have technology, we have capability, we have means. To a certain group in the background, I think they were talking to them to say, come and stop us. Remember Hook in the movie Hook, Captain Hook? Don't try and stop me, Smee. Don't try and stop me. Don't try and stop me. And then he's like, try and stop me, Smee. Stop me, Smee. Don't try and. Yeah, it was that Skywatcher going, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. Stop us doing it. Stop us. And they were brought in house. That I think is what happened. What a great thumbnail that would be. So yeah, I think that's kind of where this has went. That they've come in house. What is wide open though, wide open for debate, is this just for them to get paid and go away? Is this for them to do something interesting to help the good guys? Are they on the blue team? You know, are they working? You say you think Barber's working with Grusch and Burleson and co. In that case, isn't that a good thing they've come in house to work on things behind the scenes in the right way?
I guess so. Well, there's also the possibility that not necessarily, because there's people who think, and this is not me, by the way, but I think it's fair to say that there's people who think that when Jake went to that conference with Dr. Stephen Greer, when he met Mike Herrera, he expressed that he was red teaming or trying to red team Mike Herrera. And to folks who don't know, red teaming is a term that is used usually as like, this is the bad guy, this is the good guy, and they fight each other, red versus blue. And red is always referred to as like the quote unquote bad guy or the adversary. There are some people who still question whether Jake is still red teaming people. And that is something that I've always wondered about, but based on the interactions that we have, I don't think that he's doing it in a smart way if he's doing it, because he's exposing himself way too much, I think, with the community. So that argument, I think, is not that valid, in my opinion.
I think it's difficult for anyone behind the scenes, and I mean anyone, to know who to trust and who not to trust. I think it's easier to trust someone who out and out is in this for nefarious means, who wants to do bad things with this technology, who wants to keep this secret. It must be more difficult to be one of the quote unquote good guys and try and let someone into your circle, because every single time you do, you potentially open things up to going,
wrong,
going to shit. Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
So I don't envy them in that sense, Pavel, in any way, shape, or form. I think something, again, just to add very quickly, it's a different story, but it ties in a way, is the whole Time magazine covering this topic. So we say we're in this time where Skywatcher and that updates happened. We're in a political place where you've got Trump maybe heading towards some kind of confirmation. We're finding out the White House may have its own small crash retrieval program. You've got Grusch, you've got Burleson, you've got the UAP Disclosure Act they're trying to push through. You've got the potential for whistleblower protections. We've got that potential Reality Transparency Act. So many moving parts. Time magazine has published America is finally taking extraterrestrials seriously. And the interesting part isn't necessarily Time has produced an article here which is akin to the New York Times 2017 piece.
Yeah.
But it's that a publication like Time is now treating the possibility of ET, aliens, UAP seriously enough to cover it in a purely scientific way without the ridicule factor. So again, that's a really big one for me, because that is still a big publication as far as I'm aware. That is still a huge front cover. That's still a front cover that even if you don't read the magazine, the Time magazine front cover, that famous, outline, the writing, the font. You know, every year when they announce their person of the year, their sports of the team of the year, their invention of the year. And now we've got the classified document cover and this being covered. So the public facing side of this is, again, the Dr. Phil stuff, the drops, as much as they've been kind of poor to diminishing, is being, I think even I'm willing to say now, is being more normalized at this time it's happening. And that can only be a good thing in the short term. But I've also got to say, let me play devil's advocate here. It also means as you open the door to more people having a look, if the gatekeepers want to take a massive shit on this topic, and you have someone who does turn out as full of shit, or a massive name, a David Grusch, a Jake Barber, a Burleson, one of the guys associated with this topic, if they are found to be full of it, that can be really damaging now for the topic because it's becoming so public. So as much as it's a really good thing, it's got that exposure, there's also a lot of trepidation that comes along with that as well, I think.
Yeah, I believe so. And that phrase from the Batman that live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Die the hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Yeah, that phrase is very important in this topic specifically because we've seen it happen a couple of times already with Dr. Stephen Greer, for example, who in the early 2000s had was the guy, right? And then things started changing, and now he's no longer the guy for a lot of people. He's still the guy for a lot of people, but not for about half or something along those lines. And it always happens, and it would be unfortunate if it happened to some of these people because right now they do have the confidence from civilians, and hopefully more information comes forward quickly before it's too late, because this almost always happens, Andy. This hero and then villain kind of arc, and it's pretty disheartening sometimes.
Yeah, 100%. We've kind of touched on it, but do you agree? Thank you, David, for the super chat stuff. David said, "I feel like once Fowler left, the writing was on the wall as far as the direction which Skywatcher was heading. That seems pretty obvious now at this point." Yeah.
Yeah, and it was clear to me from that interview with Jesse that he wanted like to be told what to do. You know, whether that included contracts or not, I don't know. I don't want to speculate, but it was very clear to me that he was waiting for somebody to go and wrist slap him a little bit.
Yeah. Pete Rose, I don't think it's that Pete Rose. I think he's dead. Remember, Rossi Boy was the one who broke the Skywatcher guys onto the scene. He got psyoped and he knows it. Do you think that's the case?
Not really, no. I still withhold judgment on the entire thing, and this because Ross has covered a couple of things that I'm like, really? But I'm still forming an opinion on what that phenomenon is. I wouldn't go as far as to say that he's been psyoped at all. The furthest I would go is that he maybe got a source that is very, very close to the action, like the closest that he's ever had. And that's what makes him so confident on a lot of the things that he says and reports on. That would be a probably reasonable explanation for it. Whether that source is telling him the truth or not, that's a different story. But that's my thought on that.
I think the whole source thing is Ross clearly, and you could easily say that Ross's source is Jake Barber, for example.
Yeah.
I think then Ross, as a journalist, and now as someone who is salaried to produce content, I think that is fair to say. He is always going to then pass on information he feels is worthy of being reported, or at least will get attention and get people talking. Those can be two very different things, okay, whether it's worth being reported and whether he does it or not. That doesn't mean that over time, his relationship with that source doesn't change, and you see that sour or his reporting of it change. That may have happened over time. Obviously, you look at Ross and Bryce's relationship where it did get strained because Ross reported that the Tic Tac was Lockheed Martin technology. He now says it was flown or controlled by Lockheed Martin, not necessarily human technology, but human-controlled NHI technology. So again, even Ross's opinion, perhaps he can be too quick then to report some things. But again, if you've got people who are looking to control a narrative, if you've got looking to keep this secret, to keep things messy, to keep things muddled, you would try and use mainstream journalists to confuse this topic and tell people, because we see it all the time online. You see it on social media, you see it on podcasts, you see it on all kind of platforms. I've tried my best over the years that whenever someone tells me something, or I read something online, or I see someone's opinion that looks informed or I believe is informed, I don't just go and repeat it, because you don't know that they're telling the truth, that what they're being told is the truth, or that it's not a deliberate falsification or just being made up. So I always just tend to look at it and go, and keep it for context and use that in future. I also have a dog shit memory. So sometimes I forget and sometimes I don't put two and two together. Hence, when I say Richard Nolan can look at files in one way and I can do it a different way, I can just read and rarely put it two and two together. It's not the way my brain is wired or works. So yeah, like Ross is reporting things. I would rather hear it than not hear it though, Pavel. But I also feel that you do open yourself up to more scrutiny in that sense.
Yeah, a lot more. Especially like with claims like the big UFO too big to move. You know, and this question that you left there, I don't think I've ever said.
Just for anyone on the audio streams, in case they don't know what it says. Pixel Wizard said, Seco Activo, how is it a stretch? And they're referring to you talking about the flying UFOs with your mind. How is that a stretch if you also believe Michael Herrera's story is true?
So I've never said that I believe Michael Herrera's story is true, ever.
Do you?
I've covered I've spoken to Joey's Not My Name. I've talked to Gerb about the Herrera case. I don't know whether to believe it or not, because there's been a lot of mixed information over the years. And whenever those cases come forward, there's always a lot of mud surrounding them. And it's kind of impossible to believe it one way or the other. It's an interesting case for sure. And the claims are really concerning, especially on Herrera's side, because I'm not sure if he's like stayed on the whole trafficking aspect of it, because that is, for me, that is pretty concerning. But it's kind of hard for me to believe one way or the other without sufficient information, I think. You're muted.
Oh, yep, that will help if I unmute myself. I was just saying, I've got a lot of listener questions and thoughts across this and some other stories. Is there anything you want to discuss before we get to those?
Can you come again, please?
Excuse me. I have a lot of listener questions and thoughts on this and other stories. Yeah, but we get to those now. First one, I'll take this from the YouTube from earlier. Jesse said, what do you guys think about Dylan Borland's claim the government can manipulate our dreams?
It's a claim. There is history about MK Ultra and mind control experiments that have gone on for many, many decades. When the MK Ultra experiment was uncovered, allegedly it ended, but I'm not, if the dates are correct, it ended in 72, and then in 73, Stargate started at SRI. So I'm not sure if it's real that they can control them, but there is history of mind control in the government that cannot be ignored. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I don't know. Do they mean that they can go in and control dreams en masse? Are they looking at like the movie Inception?
Not sure.
Wonderful movie. But are you looking at being able to go in and plant an idea in someone's mind through dreams?
Great question.
That would be one I would need to know first. As someone who regularly my entire life lucid dreams, like dreams are crazy and wild and mad things. Interesting at times. Like I would 100% attest to when I'm dreaming. Most of the time, I know I'm dreaming, and I will touch concrete walls. I can feel the ground beneath my feet. I know if I'm touching water, and I can feel the sensation. But my wife never remembers dreams. Very, very rarely, unless I've done something in the dream to piss her off, and she'll tell me when she wakes up and be annoyed at me. So the idea that governments can control dreams, I would believe there's something to that. But then that goes into the whole, what is a dream? How does that reflect on consciousness? What is consciousness? I have always enjoyed the conversation around the abduction phenomenon and the idea that sometimes abductions are not physical and that someone's consciousness can be taken, and you and your wife or partner could be lying in bed and you look round and see that they're there, they're sleeping, they're content, but they're having an abduction experience and you would never know, potentially. And that would be a really strange aspect to this phenomenon that I think would terrify the public. And that. So yeah, I don't know your thought on that.
Well, I just spoke to Dr. John Blitch about the whole abduction phenomenon stuff, and even though it seems like it is very traumatic for them, I find it a little startling that now Dr. Blitch can speak openly about it, and I guess that has to do with therapy or something that he went through. But it is a very traumatic sort of thing that in many cases it would be misconstrued as a dream only, right?
Yeah. And then it would be down to the individual to act on the dream or have the dream influence them, or can it incite some kind of psychosis if you I don't know. Really weird conversation to have. But I'd be interested in having that with the right guest, someone who was like an expert in those kind of fields. Question from Long Knife. He said, Gerb has suggested the legacy program operates through the NSC, which Rubio heads. Danny Sheehan has claimed a new control group is attempting to re-legitimize the legacy program by moving it under Space Force. Now, Ross says the White House is running its own shoot-down program through the Defense Department. Are we really supposed to believe Trump, Miller, Rubio, and Hegseth don't know about these parallel efforts? With fewer than 400 people on the NSC staff, can there really be 2 or 3 separate UAP efforts running without senior figures understanding the full picture? And if Rubio can reassert oversight and consolidate them, could that actually be good for disclosure?
We can't forget that Rubio, according to what's the word, he was supposed to meet Mark McCandlish, and he passed away before they could meet, but they were already supposedly going to meet. And that really scared Marco Rubio, according to the word, through the grapevine. And I think that if that happened, that should be considered as part of the whole equation of this. But yeah, as I told you before, I think there seems to be a lot of activity going on in the background that most people are not aware of. And so we would be speculating, if anything, talking about this, because I don't have any information about this at all. What do you think?
I don't know. It goes back to that whole concept I said before, that I think no matter what we get in terms of small c, capital C, small d, capital D disclosure, confirmation, there's going to be some positives and some negatives and some really messed up stuff potentially we haven't considered. I think I take any kind of confirmation at this rate and we deal with anything after that. I would love the blue sky scientific, the James Webb Telescope has found something, yada, yada, yada. That means there may be something closer. We find something closer. Oh, does that mean something's been here already? And we can move on scientifically. I doubt that ever happens. It does look more likely we're going to get some kind of confirmation, but does that become a small confirmation? Is that going to be a seed planted that then grows into something bigger with different avenues kind of catching up all at once. I don't really know.
You know what I would want, Andy, just to be completely clear on this, and I don't think we're getting this, just telling you up front. What I would like is for there to be disclosure about the interaction that people have with the phenomenon, but also about the whole paranormal aspect of reality. And honestly, I don't think that we're going to get that soon. Hopefully, if it's like slow dripped, like it's been happening, hopefully they get to that. But man, it's pretty evident that there is something to that as well. Based on just my own life experiences with my family and all that, there's some really weird shit that has happened just in my family. And I'm sure that there's weird stuff that has happened in everybody's families on that, and not acknowledging that, that has always been a problem for me from governments. And I would want that, and the whole psi abilities aspect of it too. That should also be acknowledged, I think. Oh, do you think about that, or is it just for you? What is it that you want? What would you like to see in terms of like disclosure? Is it the James Webb stuff that you just mentioned, something scientific like that, or what do you think about those other aspects?
No, that would be like, I think the easiest and best, not even slow drip, but I think the easiest way to ease the public into the conversation would be finding something really far away, because it's not scary that something's 5 light years away. We've found lights on another planet. We've found signs of population, cities. You've got technosignatures and biosignatures. You find pollution. If you find pollution on another planet, that can be a sign of, an industry and an industrial civilization. But they're really far away, so don't worry about it. We'll send probes, and you just ease the public in. I just think that sounds like the easiest and nicest ways to go about it. And that then brings in academia, science, so all the big organizations suddenly become publicly involved in this. I think the other part of your question, though, around all the other stuff that becomes a part of it, yes, but down the line, it doesn't make any sense that within days of we get disclosure, they're talking about the afterlife. And actually, folks, we're all souls, and we're on this planet being harvested because our souls are actually very unique. And you know what? If you tomorrow pass away, don't worry. It's like Super Mario. You get another chance at it, or you get to move on to this much nicer place. So having a bad time here, up to your eyeballs in debt, your car broken, don't worry about it, folks. Just jump on to the next life. All of that's really dangerous conversations to have. And that's stuff that would be generation after generation after generation, I think, would have to be discussed, if indeed that even comes out. So yeah, and that's where even like the experiencer conversation, I've got Karen Austin coming on the podcast soon, who's really well placed to discuss all of this. And I've always had the conversation with multiple experiencers that I appreciate their position, but I can see why we don't have that conversation publicly. Because when you do have that conversation with members of the public, they shut off. They aren't ready for it. They can't deal with that just now. And then there's the difficult conversation of which experiencers are being truthful and genuine and are actually experiencing something real, as opposed to people who are lying and just trying to use this, or who think they are.
Yeah, or imagining things, or having a mental breakdowns, all that stuff. Yeah, hallucinating.
It's a really difficult conversation to have. On that, I think probably I don't know how to answer this one right now. Trax said, "Hey guys, let's say one becomes aware of having psionic abilities. How can you help the community, or where do you even go?"
So there are a couple of places that deal with that kind of realization, or some I think are more credible than others. Most of them would be seen by just a regular person as new age bullshit, to be honest with you. But I do think that there is something to that. I would start by reading Dr. Julia Mosrich's work, Dr. Dean Radin's work, Jacobo Greenberg's work, the whole Shamans of Mexico series. That is a serious scientific investigation into shamans from Mexico. That is a very interesting road to take. So But in terms of like, you realized, how did you realize that you have psionic abilities? What was, what happened? It would have to be more specific. There are places like the Monroe Institute right now, or the Institute of Noetic Sciences as well, or Dr. Jeffrey Meshloff's university as well. There are multiple places where you're taken seriously with this, if you are being serious with it too, if you're not hallucinating, as we said.
And even the folks over, I'm just going to get at Unhidden. While they are medically focused on this, they might be a
That's
really
right.
grounded place to take that kind of conversation.
That's right.
John Priestland and co. So if you check out Unhidden Health, or their website, is it unhidden.org, or I've got the thing up here. Unhidden.org. Maybe drop them a message, and those are medical professionals, qualified people that may be able to, or I imagine would be able to put you on to folks to have those conversations. But as always with that, tread very lightly and gently with information you give out and stuff. So yeah. And you know what? Really fair point from Scale Tipper. I'm sure all of these sources will gladly test your abilities for the nominal minimum of about $6,000. Yeah, you've always got to be very wary of that. But I would reach
That
out
part
to
is
Unhidden
always,
folks and
yeah.
Don't pay any money for that kind of stuff.
That's why I just direct them to books and like written scientific work, because if you don't want to give out your money for something like that, I would start with the books first and then move forward from there, after what you've learned, because it's a wealth of information about this topic, and it spans back millennia even. So happy hunting.
Yep. A lot of folks asked the question about Gary Nolan's association with Skywatcher. I've not got an official confirmation, but I imagine Gary Nolan is no longer part of the organization since that all went south. My understanding from the beginning wasn't that he was officially part of it. He was just involved. He'd spent some time with them consulting, but that I never felt he was one of like the members of the group as such. I think he was.
I think he was on, even in the website and all that. He was a science guy from Skywatcher, and he went in a lot of expeditions before the July event where Fowler just left. So I think he was. Maybe he's not anymore. I don't think. I don't know if like this moving on to trying to do this for the White House. I don't know if Nolan is involved in that. It would be nice to get some clarification from him about that. I don't think he is though, but people are asking that, I think.
He was on the website, 100%. Yeah, you're right. I've just double checked. And he was in video and stuff with them as well.
Yeah.
But I think I've just assumed he's never really mentioned it for a long time. And hopefully Gary comments and responds on something just to say what his position is. Obviously, he's now working on the council with the White House security folks, so scientific board to see what happens. But a lot of folks had asked on that one. What else have we got? So on the Ross Coulthart stuff, a few folks asked, so Brandy, I'm hesitant to believe Ross purely on his say-so. He seems increasingly willing to make dramatic claims. How much confidence should we place in this without evidence we can inspect ourselves? And if Skywatcher's now working with the military, have they essentially weaponized something that was originally presented as a research project? And quite a lot of folks asked about, is Kyle Luke, is Ross becoming too sensational, making increasingly enormous claims? Mark said Ross challenges critics to prove it, but his reporting still relies heavily on protected sources. How does he know he's not being fed misinformation and disinformation, etc.? So that was a bit of a theme there.
Yeah, it's not a question for us. It's a question for him. And hopefully somebody can ask it someday directly to him, because I've seen it happen too. And I've seen it happen in my country with a very specific person, Jaime Maussan, because at the beginning of his career, he was like very hopeful. He was getting into stuff that was really sensitive. There was like a 20-hour marathon he did in a show here in Mexico once, where he talked about a lot of the stuff that was happening in the US with disclosure and all that, and the Bob Lazar stuff. He was touching on everything at the time. And there seemed to be a moment in the 90s where he veered off towards the more sensational stuff. And I think that he became an institution of communication about these topics. And he eventually got a huge responsibility of like being the head of a major corporation that deals with this specifically, because he became an institution. So with that comes responsibility of you having to deal with a number of employees, having to pay them salaries, having to, all that comes along with it. And that increases the level of need for good numbers, and it decreases the need or the attention to objective stories and objective information. And I think that happened to Jaime, and it's very recent. Like, he just got a television channel, a national wide signal from the government directly. He had to pay, I would guess, a lot of money for that, because that doesn't come cheap, and the concession for it doesn't come cheap. And I've seen a couple of episodes of the show, and they show stuff that is very clearly fake. Like they show these fucking they unearth things from the ground, and some of them have like Alien versus Predator depicted on them, and he shows that on the channel. So this is a latent danger that everybody can go through and everybody can fall on. And I hope that it doesn't get to that point with Ross and News Nation. But yeah, there have been a couple of episodes that I've seen that I'm like, whoa, that's a little out there. Yeah, I've been looking at that for a while, actually. But he also has recent really good interviews and with really good information. So it's kind of weird.
Yeah, Jaime's he's one of those guys, and I talked about this before, and I try to say this really sensitively, where there are a whole generation of researchers and presenters and journalists who are really getting on in years, and they won't be around forever. So, there are some folks, I think it depends on your personal taste, your preference, that there are people coming through and will take these places, and you see, like, there are people who personally I would say they're bullshitters and literally make stuff up. I can be wrong, and my opinion can be wrong, or people may not like my opinion on something, but I'm not being deliberately dishonest. I think there are other folks that you can see doing that, and they will just come through and replace that generation of bullshitters. Again, there are folks who years ago perhaps had really good intentions in this topic, and then that fell away over the years and decades. I'd like to think in the years and decades to come, being here doing this, that I'm going to still have a level of what do you call it, credibility, or just, I love using an example, Pavel, and this is purely just my opinion. When the whole 3i Atlas thing happened, there were people who made shows daily on the whole 3i Atlas situation, and they reported on, in my opinion, absolutely fuck all on a daily basis. They made stuff up, or they used really spurious scientific articles, and I put science in quotes, and they put out show after show after show after show. And it's like, I'm not saying people should have called them out, right? But just me personally, I look at that and go, and then they just move on to the next thing because it's clicks, money, likes, engagement. It would have been really easy for me, and maybe I could have got a new car, if I just reported every single day, YouTube live, bang. So today's 3i Atlas update is there are rumors that it's dropping orbs off a UFO mothership and blah, blah. No, because it's probably not. I would talk about it now and again when there was a big update or something happened, or maybe something worth discussing. But it's just so easy to bullshit in this topic, and people make a fortune off it. And I'd like to think I'm not going to ever go that direction, because right now, still after 6 years of doing this, but this has been my whole life interested in this topic, it's not stuff I find interesting as much as there's the odd thing about Antarctica or the Andrew Basiaggio Mars mission stuff, which I find fun and fascinating, but I don't believe most of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, but each to their own, because there are audiences for this stuff. I totally appreciate that, and there are ways to cover it, and there are ways to cover it I like. There are ways to cover it I don't like. But I just looked at a lot of those people who were doing that stuff around 3i Atlas every single day, and I was like, for the love of Christ, man, like really?
Yeah.
But they made a fortune, so well done them.
Yeah.
Good on them.
And it's for me, I can mention somebody who does it really well and he touches on many stories that are not true or not real. And he's very honest about the level of conviction that he has. And he's more of a storyteller than somebody who does journalism or the day-to-day stuff like me or you two. You're doing it more increasingly. I'm talking about Chris Ramsey, because he has a very specific way to cover everything he covers. Those shows where he's reading on documents and he's always honest. He's like, I don't think this is real, but it's a fun thing to do. It's fun for the lore and all that. And I respect that. Right. But yeah, there's a way in which you do it that doesn't land off for people.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to share, like, I've sat on this for a while. I was sent a picture that I think might be something pretty unique, pretty interesting from a listener. And I'll just share it. And I don't do this very often, but for me, folks, I don't want to go down the sensational route, but I'd love to know, Pavel, your thoughts on this alleged image. So this young lady is being terrified by some kind of alien being to her left. And do you know what? Folks on audio platforms, it's Sigourney Weaver and the alien from Alien, the xenomorph, right next to her face. You know the image. But this is the kind of stuff that people post and sensationalize, and it's wild. And like I say, Jon Stewart posting the
it just happened today.
The signs video from the Brazil party. I was like, he got to be joking. He's got to be joking with that.
I think sometimes he is just fucking with people. I think
yeah,
so.
I hope so. But again, Boy Who Cried Wolf stuff, like,
Yeah.
And this is from one of the top 10 podcasters on the planet saying this right now, I remember. So yeah, apparently. Last couple of questions, because we're over 2 hours now, folks. So final call, if people can leave likes, comments and stuff, because we've been going a while, and I think
I do want to say something real quick. In my description, you can see the 5 small business sponsors that the channel has on Psicoactivo. If you guys want to check any of those out, that'd be really cool. It would help the channel tremendously. So thank you.
Who are those?
It's Anomalous Cards. It's the Lookup app. It's UFO Designs 3D. It's Edson Freeman, an author, and attorney Greg Greenberg at Greg Greenberg Law. Thank you guys for supporting the show.
Yeah, sorry, folks. I do have Anomalous Cards. I'm not
Yay!
like Pavel. I never took money off them because I'm a nice guy, right?
Fuck you. Fuck you.
So I did open some of these with my kids, and I will show them in a future show. I'm going to do a little giveaway. I just asked them to send me some sets, and I will post them away because they emailed me before. I'm just really bad at getting back to folks this year on emails. So I will be doing a little giveaway. But Anomalous Cards, all those other sponsors of Pavel's, please support them.
Yeah. Goes back to the community. So yeah, it's about that. I want to try and keep just doing that, not go to major corporations or anything, just between you guys.
And listen, there, Samantha, if I had money, I'd give you too some. So I hope likes and subscribes will do.
That's
Absolutely.
more than enough. More than enough.
Whoa. I mean, money would help, Pavel, but likes and subscribes. No. Any likes, subscribes, hypes, comments, reviews on audio platforms
helps a lot.
Slow down. If you've bought a copy of my book, Atlas of UFOs, thank you. But reviews of that on Amazon too. Put it this way, like less than 5% of people who have bought my book have left a review on Amazon. So it's really difficult to get people to do it. So if you're one of those sitting thinking, I love these guys' shows, I should do this, but I've just never got round to it. If the first thing you do when we finish up here is go and do that, that would be greatly appreciated. So yeah, that would be good. And final question for you. What am I going with here? There was a lot of random stuff. What are we going for? Right. Okay. So a few folks asked on the whole Gerb underwater stuff. So why does UAP Gerb, this is from one key player, why does UAP Gerb accept some elements of the 4chan whistleblower story while rejecting others? What criteria is he using? And also, Stumpy Thumbs said the original 4chan underwater facility claim struck some listeners as oddly compelling. And there's a little bit more to that. But yeah, regarding the underwater stuff, Gerb, the 4chan stuff, because Gerb's a really, really thorough researcher. Everyone seems to know that. Regardless of what side of the fence you fall down on, there are some really sensational claims within that he does say, there may be something to it. And that underwater facility stuff really gets the blood boiling, gets an exciting one. What's your take on that?
I don't know what to think of it, man, if I'm honest with you. I've heard about it a while ago. Gerb seems to be convinced that there is something to it, but I would like to see more material on it, see what exists. Yeah. Thank you for the hat fund money.
Yeah. I love the idea of the underwater facility. Again, it's if Pavel has an issue with people using UAP or being able to control or fly UAP with their mind, this is probably another one that falls into that category of, is it actually like an underwater? I imagine like the Turtles program when I was a kid, Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles or Ninja Turtles, depending on where you were. You had like the Technodrome and this big facility that rolls around, and when it's approached by government, etc., it disappears for days on end. It doesn't like to be contacted. Or I think that's really fun and fascinating. I would love to see more about that. See if one of these drops happened and we actually got some documents on it. Something like that would be pretty cool. It's one of those where under the water, a few folks asked, would a Stumpy Thumb said, would an underwater facility actually make strategic sense? Yes, because it's the hardest place to get to. You know, it's easier for your average person to get to the skies and look at the sky than it is the water. You can literally stand on the ground and look up with binoculars and whatnot and see things really high in the sky, blurry or out of focus as they may be, but you can see something. You could stand on the shore or a mountain and look down at the ocean and you will literally see nothing but the surface of that water. So 100% it makes sense to be under the water in this kind of circumstance. In the same way that for a society on a planet to live on the surface of the planet is one of the worst places to live because it exposes you to every danger and element going, where actually living under the ground would be far, far more useful and sensible. But hey ho, what do I know?
Yep. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's see if because he was very adamant that he thought that there was something to that Tic Tac factory that he referred to. So I would guess that there's something coming eventually from him that talks about this. So I'm excited. Let's see what he's got, and not just the 4chan whistleblower stuff. Maybe something newer, right?
Yeah, I'm going to finish with this because someone just put like a super chat in, and I don't like to miss these things out. Although I think they've gave it to you, Pavel, so you know, fuck them. Actually, no. Depressed. It's getting so late. Depressed Canadian. Do you think this topic will ever get away from the "trust me, bro, I got sources" framing? Ross is a very good journalist, but he will say things with emphatic certainty before backtracking or refusing to go into more detail. Do you want to answer it first?
There's a lot of people that do that in this space. I don't think we'll ever get away from it because people are going to still keep doing it. It is a very depressing question, depressed Canadian. Just wanted to point that out. But, you know, you're going to have to educate yourself a little more by watching all the people that are like trying to do this. And trust your instinct with each and every one of them. That would be my only suggestion, really.
Yeah, and for me, it's the same as any space, any social media space. I follow football really closely. Right now, it's the transfer window where teams will buy and sell players, and there are all kinds of wild rumors happen with tiny accounts saying that player everyone listening to this knows Lionel Messi. Lionel Messi is moving to Guadalajara. No, he's not. They'll just make up stories for clicks, engagement, rumor. People will share it. More and more kids are on social media. They don't know the difference between fact and fiction. I'm trying to educate my kids. No subject will get away from the whole trust me bro stuff. People just have to be more educated, more discerning, and yeah, hopefully shows like this help you navigate the topic a little bit more. And I would never want to convince anyone. I always say, Pavel, but I just like to help folks see a bit of a clearer picture, or at least give them another way to frame or look at the topic. So yeah, I think it's a really fair question, but the answer is an emphatic no. It won't get away from trust me, bro, because there's an audience for people who want fantasy, sensationalism, speculation, which, given what we talk about, does come as part of even the most sensible conversations. But there are people who, I seen someone earlier on say, look out for the word bombshell at the start of every single tweet or post or show. I would say that's perfectly reasonable, because not everything is sensational, a bombshell, huge news, viral, and that's why I don't do massive breaking news shows every single day. Why Pavel will report on big news, but also small nuggets in the news, and he'll pull a piece of legislation and say we both report on this differently, Pavel. But you will pull like a 15-minute show together saying this bit of legislation's dropped. What's really interesting is a couple of comments on it, and you pull that together and let folks make up their mind. That's interesting. And to Mr. Justin, let's leave it with Mr. Justin. If everything is a bombshell, then nothing is a bombshell, and that is very, very fair.
We love you, Justin.
Yeah. And stay tuned, folks, for my bombshell interviews coming this week. Can I just mention to finish off, Pavel, really enjoyed this as always. Monday shows are great. There's been over a couple of thousand people tuned in to watch a Scottish guy and a Mexican guy chat about UFOs. So really good. I have a police officer, Roy Teague, joining me on the podcast tomorrow night. So Roy has the book Close Encounters of the Police Kind, and his incredible true stories of the unexplained from British cops. So yeah, really interesting. I'm going to have him on. Quite down to earth. Again, the Brits usually are on this topic, with the exception of some. So any questions if folks have for a police officer who is investigating the UFO conversation, please let us know. But yeah, and I have other guests I will be confirming the names of really, really soon. I've got quite a lot that I believe will be coming up in the coming weeks. And of course, Pavel, every Monday we'll be doing this. And next week is your turn to host. So the show will look a lot better and be far more prepared.
No, actually, you prepare better than I do. So
yeah, that's true. Have you anything else to shill before we leave?
No, I'll see you guys during the week. Watch out for all the channels that you usually take a look at. I think that there's more stuff coming from different avenues, so be aware, and I'll be aware. Thank you, Andy.
Trust me, bro. Trust me, bro. Yeah.
Trust me, bro. 2 weeks.
If you hate all the Trust Me Bro stuff, leave a like, comment, all that crap. Leave a review on the audio platforms. Go and review the book. Go and check out Pavel's channel. Subscribe to mine. Subscribe to his. All greatly appreciated, and we'll see you all very, very soon, folks. Bye. Bye bye. No copyright strikes if I hum it.